Hi there, folks. Today we're going to be talking about the IHCT essay. This is one of many formats of essay, not the only one that you should or could do, nor does it always have to be in the same format that I'm presenting it now. You can always modify it to your needs. That being said, it is a good way to start off writing essays. It is a little bit more formulaic. It tells you what you should have in pretty much every paragraph, and this is definitely a good start for some of your slower starters, some of those folks which have a tough time getting your thoughts going. So the I stands for initially, the H for however, the C for consequently, and the T for therefore. Now, something to bear in mind, these words are designed to organize the ideas in the paragraphs they're associated with, but they do not need to be openers for those paragraphs. In fact, I would avoid it just because it can become really quickly stilted and unsophisticated. So we're going to take a look at an organizer I made, which again pretty much lists out everything we should be looking for in an essay, an IHCT essay. The introduction is going to be very similar to what you've worked with before. You have a hook, an interesting statement to get things going. There's a few ways to start this. Probably the most controversial is a question. Some teachers like it, some dislike it. Proponents will say that it automatically provokes an intellectual response from the reader, while critics will say that it's corny, hokey, and it suggests that the writer doesn't know the answer to the question, which makes the writing seem a little weaker. For the title, author, and genre, this is really just to make it clear what you're talking about. Genre doesn't mean comedy, romance, it means film, short story, drama, etc. For the background and context, this is where you give a really short and sweet summary of the text relative to the subject. If your subject is relationships, you're going to give me a summary of the text around relationships. When I talk about a summary, again, I'm really talking 2 or 3 sentences that are just necessary to establish the context to which you will be discussing. If you're discussing a concept as well, like feminism and potentially post-colonialism, or any subject or any lens that's similar to that, you might establish what it means in the context, but I wouldn't go overboard with that either. So the thesis we'll make another video for, so we won't get into that too much. So the initially is where we establish the character's hopes and dreams, their motivations. This is the impetus for what happens in the rest of the text. And if we don't understand this, it's really hard to understand how the character ends up at the end, and also the significance of what it means for the character to be at the end. So this paragraph is, again, all about beginnings. That being said, we do understand that these motivations are changing and should be changing, and the significance of their motivation changing is, again, important. The third paragraph is going to be, however, this is an obstacle. This is what gets in the way of those initial desires of the character, which is going to lead us into our following paragraph, the consequently. And this is how the character responds and is changed by the obstacle. Here's the kicker. There are more obstacles in a text than one. So we could very realistically get a series of howevers and consequently's, obstacles and reactions and responses to those obstacles. So each of those obstacles and reactions is going to add 2 paragraphs to your essay. So you have 4 conflicts, 2 paragraphs each. That's going to add up to 8 extra paragraphs outside from your initially, as well as your therefore, introduction, and conclusion. Going into that therefore, this is how the character changes relative to their initial hopes and desires and motivations. Have they achieved them? Have they not? What is the measure for that? How do we know this? And also, frankly, where are they at the end? How have they ended up in the text? And that's going to tell us a lot, again, of the message of the piece. Authors don't normally, now again, this depends on which kind of text creator you're talking about. Typically, they don't put the ending as fluff. There's really almost always a point to it. This is the resolution that the author, text creator, deems is inevitable, necessary. It might be what the author, text creator believes should happen. There's significance in the resolution. So we really want to be careful that we address it. Now, again, this is after all of these obstacle and consequences, what is the overall change in the character. Okay, and that's how it's going to be distinguished a little bit from the consequently paragraphs. Lastly, we're going to get into the conclusion. Now, the conclusion has two parts. Now, we're going to really avoid the whole restate your thesis approach to writing an essay. We're going to focus on two things. The first is going to be a summary of the lesson experienced by the character. So what did the character learn? Secondly, we're going to take a look at what's called the philosophical statement, a generalizing statement, a universal statement. These all work, but really what we're trying to do here is, well, what can society learn from the experiences of the character, or how does the experiences of the character, or how do the experiences of the character reflect some aspect of society? This is really where you're imparting your wisdom. Something that's really important to understand about this kind of essay is once you sort out the obstacles, the responses to those obstacles, and all the other parts of it, you've really identified what's the proof. This is your evidence. These are the significant moments. But you have not yet told me why those moments are significant and what do they say about society. So if you only tell me what are the obstacles, the responses to those obstacles, etc., you are getting a 60%. It's very hard for you to get above a 60% with exclusively plot summary. In fact, it's very possible to get less than that. So bearing that in mind, do not forget this is your proof. This is not your discussion, and really, it's not even a point. Okay, so you need to make sure that you build something around the scaffolding. Again, discussion looks like connection to society, analysis of figurative language and devices, understanding tone, character motivation, character point of view, narration, etc. So don't forget that you need to have this in your essay. Again, quick summary. When you look at the introduction, what are you talking about? What's your position? That's your thesis. Where does the character start off of? And initially, what gets in the way? How does the character change? What else gets in the way? How else does the character change? What else gets in the way? How else does the character change? Etc. Where does the character end up? Summarize the lesson experienced by the character. Connect that lesson to society. That's your IHCT essay. Hope that helped. And again, look for more videos on this channel. If you have any questions on these subjects, there should be a thesis one up shortly. Thank you again for your time.